Namaste, everybody, and welcome to Aapka Pundit. As an astrologer, have you ever wondered as to what is that factor that makes a person drink heavily or maybe do drugs? Well, if you have tried to figure out what it is and you've not been able to do so, stick with me and we'll do the astrology of addiction. So, now when it comes to addiction, it obviously is a disease. And when I say it's a disease, anytime there is a disease, it has to do with your lagna and your lagna lord. So there are certain parameters that I have outlined which we have to keep in mind and through which we have to see and go through every chart to see if the factors for addiction are there or not. Again, this is not something that is that I have gotten from the classic texts like Parashar Horashastra or any other one. This is purely a research of mine and something that I have been working upon for a long time. So, based on observing a few hundred horoscopes, these are the parameters that came uh, to me and that I've outlined here, and we'll go through it one by one. So, the first one is that there obviously has to be an affliction to the Lagna and the Lagna Lord. The second one is Jupiter has to be afflicted and aspecting the Lagna. Now, Jupiter is a great benefic, probably the most benefic planet in Jyotish. But if Jupiter is afflicted, that becomes a problem area. So we have to look out for Jupiter being afflicted and aspecting the Lagna. That's the second factor. The third factor is the second house and the second lord afflicted. See, the second house in Jyotish has to do with food, whatever we consume. And anytime the second house or the second lord gets afflicted, the food that we consume gets afflicted. So we have to keep that in mind. The fourth factor has to do with malefic moon making a connection with the second house or the second lord. What happens is that the moon is the karaka for the mind. So if moon is afflicted, the mind is afflicted. Moon is also the karaka for chemicals, and moon is also the karaka for food. So anytime that you see moon being afflicted, and making an association with the second house, that just means that you are going to be consuming something not desirable. And the next factor is that Rahu or Mars have to make a connection with the first or the second house or its lord. Now, Rahu is considered poison in Jyotish. So, anytime that it makes a connection with the Lagna, which is yourself, your physical self, or the second house, which is the food that you eat, that corrupts that house and that lord. And Mars, again, is a very potent malefic. So, that would have similar effect. Not so much as Rahu, but yes, very similar. And then lastly, the fifth house or the fifth lord has to be afflicted. The fifth house or the fifth lord is the house of the judgment or your mind. And when that gets afflicted, your judgment to decide what is right, what is wrong, whether to leave the addiction or hang on to that addiction, that is impaired. And that leads to serious cases where, it can be a situation which is life threatening, and in a lot of cases it can take your life as well. So let's look at a few examples to drill the point home and see the parameters that I outlined. How do they line up in regards to the charts that we are going to see? There are more than, I believe, 9 or 10 examples that I have in this paper here, which is available on our website, which is www.aapkapundit.com. You can always have access to it there and read it in its entirety there. And also you can subscribe to our YouTube channel to watch this video again. So let's look at the first chart. The first chart belongs to River Phoenix, child phenom, who is also the brother of a famous Hollywood actor. And let's see, based on the parameters that we outlined, how his chart shows the signs of addiction. And let's start with Jupiter being in the Lagna, which is a huge blessing by any account. But do you see the affliction to Jupiter? Well, Jupiter is the worst planet for this chart because it's Libra ascendant. Jupiter rules the third and the sixth, so it's a malefic planet for this Lagna. See the influences onto Jupiter, which also means the influences onto the Lagna. Saturn, a debilitated Saturn aspects it, as well as Mars, which is debilitated aspects it. It's a very bad combination right there. So we've seen the bad influence on the Lagna. Look at the Lagna Lord now. The Lagna Lord, Venus, goes to the 12th house and it's debilitated and aspected by the 12th Lord, or rather conjunct with the 12th Lord. So that again is not a very pretty picture. Then let's come to the second factor that we had discussed. Moon. Do you see Moon making a connection with the second house? Yes, Moon is aspecting onto the second house and is placed in the Dushtana. It's placed in the eighth house. So again, there's a serious problem with the Moon as well. The fifth house is again under affliction. The fifth lord, as we have already seen, is debilitated because Saturn becomes the fifth lord. The fifth house has Rahu Ketu axis. It's on the 511 axis, so the fifth house is afflicted there as well. So, there are multiple issues that are here that basically afflict the Lagna Lord, afflict Jupiter, which is not able to provide any benefic influence to it. Moon making an association with the second house. The second Lord Mars being debilitated, that does not help. The fifth house debilitated, the fifth Lord getting the aspect of a malefic Mars as well as Rahu Ketu. It's really a bad picture. And unfortunately, River Phoenix had a very very short life. He died, I think, at the age of 23. A true talent, but could never really make the best of it. And I think he died of drug overdose. So really unfortunate on that part. The second chart that we're going to see today belongs to Christian Brando, and he happens to be the son of Marlon Brando, the very famous actor. And so, what do you see with his chart? Again, you have Jupiter in the Lagna, and Jupiter again, because it's Libra Lagna, becomes the worst malefic for this Lagna. And not only that, Jupiter is retrograde. Not only that, it is aspected. It is on the Rahu Ketu axis, which also forms a Guru Chandal yoga. So that Jupiter is not in really good shape to protect from any angle. What is also going on with that Jupiter is that it's in an exchange. So the Lagna Lord goes to the sixth house and the sixth Lord goes in the Lagna. It's a 1-6 exchange, which is not a favorable exchange. So the Lagna Lord and the Lagna both being afflicted. Come to the second point, which was about the second house, second Lord. What do you see with the second Lord Mars? Well, the second Lord Mars has the aspect of Saturn. And it's anytime you have the aspect of Saturn, it's not good. Plus that Saturn being the fifth lord is in Gandanta, so that is again not a good thing. But focuses on the moon. The moon is aspected by Mars and Saturn. The mind, the karka for the mind, moon, is really afflicted. And if I remember clearly or correctly, Marlon Brando said that his son was a basket full of emotional disorder. This was his father saying this about his son. So you see the moon, very, very dark moon, afflicted by Saturn, which is again retrograde, aspected by Mars, conjunct with Mars rather, not providing any help there. And, moon also being associated with the second house because Mars becomes the second lord. So again, you see the moon's connection with the second house. So all the parameters, the lagna lord, second house, um, being afflicted, second lord being afflicted by Saturn, the fifth house being afflicted by Mars and Saturn, the fifth lord in Gandanta. There are just multiple things that are going in here, and it was a bad picture. And again, unfortunately, like River Phoenix, even Kristen Brando died. He didn't die that young, but he was still only like 50, 50 something that he died. I think it was in 2008 that he passed away. But he was a lifelong drug addict, and unfortunately, in spite of having such a powerful father, having all the name, fame, success in the family, there was really not a promising picture when it comes to the horoscope. The next chart that we see belongs to Bonnie Lee Bakley, who was famous by the virtue of her marriage to Robert Blake. In fact, it was her ninth marriage, if I'm not mistaken. So, again, the parameters that we outlined. So, let's start with the Lagna Lord. The Lagna Lord here, Saturn, is on the Rahu Ketu axis. And the Lagna itself has no malefic influence, but Saturn is retrograde and is on the Rahu Ketu axis. The second house has the influence of Mars, which is very strong because Mars and Saturn exchange. So it's a nice Dhani Yoga, which I'm sure she must have experienced due to her marriage. But it's a very afflicted second house because it has Mars there, and Jupiter is aspecting onto the second house as well. Now you would say that here Jupiter is benefic, but again, it really is not because Jupiter rules two Dushthanas, rules the 12th and the 3rd. Jupiter is placed in the 8th house and is in Gandanta. So Jupiter really is not in a good position here to provide any kind of strength. And so then let's focus in on the moon. The moon, you see, again makes an association with the second lord because Saturn aspects onto moon, and so the moon and the second house connection becomes apparent here again. But just keep your eyes on the moon. What do you see there? There is a lot going on. Number one, it's a very dark moon, very, very dark moon. It is aspected by Mars and it is aspected by Saturn. It is also in a Grah Yudh with Ketu. So there is it's just a very bad picture with the moon there. And the fifth lord, Venus, that goes into the sixth house. It's again retrograde. So all the parameters that we outlined earlier, they basically come to the fore here. And again, unfortunately, it was due to drugs and other addictions that she had a very short life, and I think she was 44 years old when she died. So not a true pic, no, not a really great picture. The last chart that we have here belongs to the famous actress Drew Barrymore. And the reason why I wanted to show you this chart is there are a lot of people who go through addiction but come out of it. And what could be that single factor or multiple factors that bring them out of addiction? Well, according to my research, it has to do with Jupiter. Jupiter being such a great benefic, if it is powerful and well placed in your horoscope, has the capability to give you a new life many times over. So let's look at this chart and see what are the parameters for, do if the parameters for addiction apply here, and how she was able to overcome this. So let's start with the Lagna and the Lagna Lord. So we see that the Lagna Lord is very well placed in the 11th house, is exalted with another benefic Jupiter. So really no affliction on that part. But the Lagna itself has Rahu Ketu on the 1-7 axis. So that is an affliction. The second Lord is with a very powerful Mars, which is exalted. So that is an affliction to the second lord. The second house has Saturn, which is retrograde. So, second house, second lord, both afflicted. And you then see the moon again making a association with the second house. So, the addiction parameters do come about in this case. And in the case of the fifth house, since Mercury becomes the fifth house, we see that it's conjunct the strong Mars. So the fifth lord gets afflicted, but the fifth house is not afflicted, because actually, on the contrary, it's a very good aspect, because Jupiter and Venus, both of which are very strong planets, they aspect out into the fifth house. So the fifth house becomes it's safe, not only safe, but I think it prospers, because it has the aspect of strong Venus and Jupiter. And Jupiter here, really, if you see, although it owns the eighth house and the 12th and the 11th house, but it's really, it has the aspect of Saturn, but apart from that, it's pretty okay. It's aspecting onto the fifth house, and it's with a very good benefic exalted Venus there. So it is my belief that it was this Jupiter and the strong Lagna Lord that really got her out of addiction, and then she was able to really excel in her career. So anytime that you're looking at charts where you have somebody who's an addict, or can see the potential of somebody becoming an addict, always look for these factors. Look whether the Lagna Lord, if there's a malefic influence, is the influence, the malefic influence, getting cancelled, or being overpowered by the benefic influence or not, and is Jupiter able to save the person from addiction or not. So these are the parameters that you should definitely look for when you are looking at charts of people who are suffering. And like with other researches of mine, this is an ongoing study. We will keep on looking at more charts, and try and study this theory more, and see if there are other factors that could influence addiction, or bring about a cure in the addiction as well. So till the time we meet again, thank you so much for watching, and namaste.